The round table is a 100% volunteer non-profit organization, and we work. We send out our food to mostly mentally challenged, homeless, substance abusers, addicts in the Copenhagen area. We work on big venues, mega events, wholesales, food fairs, places where surplus food in big amounts occur. We started in 2014 by having a total focus on food waste or surplus food, where we were invited to Roskilde Festival, who are, if not the biggest, one of the biggest venue in Europe, where we were invited down to try to improve their efforts to catch the surplus food. The year before, they had catched about 2,000 to 3,000 meals, and we came with a setup of 75 volunteers, most of them chefs and social workers and people with knowledge. We work with what we call qualified volunteers, people who are in their everyday life doing the same task as they have in the round table. We had a big ambition. We had a lot of planning, and the festival came, and we rented a big kitchen neighbor to the festival, and we succeeded in collecting 25 tons of surplus food. About half of it was upcycled by producing meal. It could be something that was close to expiring date, and we saved it and by cooking it, bringing it up to 80 degrees, cooling it down fast to 5 degrees, and then freezing it in, and then sending it out to homeless shelters and centers for refugee and a lot of other places. And we were doing the solutions from hour to hour, from day to day. We made a traceability system when we collected the food. A lot of the work doing big scale collection. There's 100 food stalls on a Roskilde Festival, and you always have to know where the food came from, where you deliver it to somebody. Is the traceability. Where did you get it from, and where did you deliver it? So we used about a third of the time on registration, developed an app for mobile phones, so we could pretty fast let it in. Today, I think it's better with the barcodes, but it was a big work, and we succeeded pretty well, I think. We had some challenges. Bread, as most of you know, is one of the big surplus food or food waste challenges, and so it was for us. We had 5 big containers, what you call refrigerating containers, and a lot of the space was taken out by bread, and bread is not so much asked for social vulnerables because of the big surplus production. So I asked the chefs, can't we do anything about all this bread, so we don't have to send it along to landfill or animal feeding? And one of the chefs, he took the bread and tore it apart, soaked it in some water, and we added about 40-45% of new flour, because the gluten has already been used, and yeast, and we baked new bread in big size focaccia-ish bread, which then we were making in a bake-off version and freezed in, and then we could store it. But it was still bread, and bread was not asked for in big amounts. So I asked them, can't you do anything else than just make new bread? And our head chef went into his kitchen. After 2 hours, he said, "Peter, come here." And I went in, and there was big pots, 250 liters pots. And he took a spoon and gave me taste it. And I said, "Oh, it's a very good bechamel sauce." And he said, "Yeah, I made it from water, old bread, and a little cream." And at the same time, we just had 700 kilos of miced meat coming in. So we produced a fairly big amount of lasagna that day. And we've been doing that all along the time we have been here. We try to see what's coming in, because it changed all the time, the surplus food that you are being offered. At a time, we were from a wholesaler called me up and said, "Peter, we have 4.5 tons of cherry sauce." And, it's a cherry sauce that in Denmark only are used for kind of a rice pudding, a risalamande, and they're only eating this into Christmas. And this was in March, as I remember, and it would not last to next Christmas. So 4.5 tons of cherry sauce. Okay, I went to our head chef and I say, "I challenge you." And he took this bucket of cherry sauce, and I'll come back 2 days later. And at the same time, we had some chilies coming in. So he reduced the cherry sauce a little and added the chili and some spices and made a Haugelund sauce, like you use for Peking dog and such things. I said, "That's nice, but 4.5 tons of Haugelund sauce, I cannot get rid of that. We don't have so many social vulnerable Asian people eating Haugelund sauce, so we cannot. I'm sorry, you have to do better." And he was a little insulted, but I came back 2 days later and I say, "Sit down," and he served me ice cream, cherry ice cream. And then I called a friend of mine who had a ice producing company, and I went there, and all we had to do was pouring the buckets into the ice machine, picked up 2 tons of this cherry sauce, and then it became very easy to call a shelter for homeless and say, "Do you want the cherry ice?" And yes, of course they wanted that. We found out after nailing it at Roskilde Festival that if we could nail it at one of the biggest venues, we could do it in a lot of other events and venues. We had a good press on it. We won a fine prize European Festival Award for green excellence, and it gave us possibility of getting in contact with these events and venues. So we rolled out to sports events, to food fairs, and we're doing that ever since. We try to create innovative solutions for whatever is coming in. We, over the years, over the last soon 9 years, we sent about 7 million meals out to social vulnerables. That's about between 200 and 400 tons a year. And we're still going on and try to tackle. When we started, we had a lot of focus on the food waste. Today, we more see the surplus food as a resource of making solution in the social area. It's very easy when you work with chefs. You don't have to make a lot of sheets and reports, and they know what to do when they get the product and can fairly easy transform it into, or upcycle it into a meal. Of course, it's a challenge to work alone with volunteers. It's a resource, but it's not a resource that's showing up every day at 8 o'clock and delivering a whole day's work. But if we had to do it with employees instead, the cost would be enormous. We found out that the surplus food that we collect at a event, before we deliver it to a homeless person, we've been lifting it 10 to 15 times. That means that the 1 ton become 10 to 15 tons of lifting. The handling of the products is, in my book, one of the biggest challenges that we have to approach, because it's close to impossible to, as it is now, all these, there's a lot of, all over Europe, a lot of different food banks and projects that works with social vulnerable and surplus food. But I don't think it's measurable. I would believe that it is less than 1% of the surplus food that's there that we are able to catch. And we need, in my book, we need to have legislation about surplus food. In Denmark, there's been a little debate on to make a law against surplus food, and they've been it's been pretty much driven by lobbyists from the food chain, who of course don't want if how should I put it? In Denmark we have 3,000 supermarkets, and they're open about 365 days a year. And if every supermarket have to use 1 hour handling the surplus food and delivering to a well-doing organization, it all adds up, and it will be about 20 million euros a year they have to use on wages on these people handling. So they much rather throwing in the bin and throw it away instead of donating it. If they have to do the registration and have to use square meters for storing and all this, and then it becomes cheaper to throw it away. At the same time, it's funny, if they throw it away, they have to pay a little tax or for somebody, the garbage man, to pick up the garbage. In Denmark, it's approximately 30 cents a kilo. Yeah. But if they call me and say, Peter, we have 2 tons of tomatoes, would you please come and pick it up? It's presented as a gift, but it's not a gift, it's a task. We're going to use a lot of, we have to have cars, we have to have gasoline on the cars, we have to have storage, we have to have food security, we have to have insurance, a lot of things. And there's no money following the donated food. So I mean that we have to look into to make it less easy just to donate it to anybody. There has to be money on the top of the food, because the further you go to the end user or the detail shop, the more difficult it becomes to tackle it. When the food leave the pallets, the time you use on handling, it makes it impossible to make a business case as sustainable in that way. I think that in Europe we should look very much into making a legislation like they have in France, where you have fines from 3,000 to 75,000 euros for not donating edible food. Yeah. Well, I think I'm done.
Peter, I think that was a very nice ending, an eye-opener as well, with all of your knowledge in these challenges and barriers, and what could maybe enable some of the solutions as well. So thanks a lot for a very insightful presentation, Peter.